And Mary Rogers, you are up first.
Well, actually, it's CPC and Gary and Janet here, and it's also to explain some of your recommendations, the new projects for CPC, and I just have them as backup on the.
Okay. Well, whoever would like the hot seat, please, please join us.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
And sign in, please.
I was going to say, officially, right. I'm Gary Sorkin, and I am the chair of the CPC, and with me are...
Mary Rogers, the coordinator.
And Jan Plowey, assistant or vice chair.
Vice chair.
All right.
So we'd be happy to review this year's recommendations with you if that's what you hope to accomplish
Well,
this evening.
just give us the highlights.
Okay, so we have 6 applications.
Five.
Well, we have 5. We've taken 1 off, and I'll explain what happened to that. So the first one, I don't know what material you have in front of you,
I
but
don't think we have that.
Behind.
okay. So the first recommendation from the CPC is a request from the Housing Authority, and that is for $75,000 to hire a housing specialist.
Is that full-time?
Part-time.
Part-time.
We anticipate.
Is that 28, Dan?
Is that 28, 29, is that what we're looking at?
I'm
Is that a
sorry,
shared position?
shared between us and another town, you mean?
Yeah.
No, at this point it is just for Wellfleet for part-time. We anticipate that it will probably be over a 2-year to 18-month period that we could hire someone depending upon the qualifications and what we have to pay. We are the only town on the Cape now that doesn't have a housing specialist. So Truro recently hired one. And it doesn't impact what we can do in terms of affordable housing and both the complexity of the rules and regulations, all of the zoning bylaws, the application for funding, and the RP process have gotten much more complex. We are a lay board, and this is to hire someone with technical expertise and experience to help guide us and the town. We did have a conversation with Dan about whether this should be a position for the town versus the Housing Authority, and it was decided that it would be a quote-unquote consultant position to the Housing Authority.
Okay.
So it's gonna be paid out of consultancy?
Well, it will be paid out of CPC funds administered by the Housing Authority.
So this person would be a consultant?
A consultant, right, as opposed to creating.
Right,
Now-
creating a position.
Right, exactly right. There is some hope that if we demonstrate the compelling need and a good job is done, that perhaps we would look longer term about creating this position, but right now it is not a position created for the town.
So is that 75,000 a not to exceed number? As a longtime consultant, I know there's ways to structure consulting agreements where you blow right through what the original proposal is and end up, they say, well, my work's not done and it'll cost this much more. So
Fred, the last time we hired a consultant, we actually put out an RFP and got a detailed response with the hourly rate and the task to be delivered on that. And we anticipate doing the same thing with the housing specialist. And our experience with our previous, or we currently have her under contract, consultant has been very positive. She's done the jobs and it's actually come in at less money.
So there'd be a set of accomplishments they would have
Exactly
to
right. There are
achieve.
deliverables that we hope to identify and say, this is what we want to accomplish, how much will it cost and what can you do?
Okay.
Will she be applying for that position?
Our current consultant,
Yeah.
it's entirely possible. But there are a number of good qualified people on the Cape, and we hope to attract one of them.
One other question, and this is going to be deliberately vague, so you can feel free to say I have no idea. There was a consultant at a company I worked with one time who essentially became a full-time consultant there because the work that they delivered, only they understood. So the maintenance of it and the refreshing of it became an annual process that guaranteed they would have employment forever. Are these deliverables such that they stand alone, or are they going to have to be refreshed and, you know?
I think the answer is yes, Fred, is that I'm sure that in the initial write-up, they will be specific and they'll be project specific.
So when the project's done, it's done?
It's done. The other side of the coin is we may find that this person, just for the sake of argument, is wonderful at writing grants. And so we may then go pursue grants that we had not previously, and she may uncover opportunities and things of that nature.
But that'd be a
So-
separate scope.
Exactly right,
Separate
it would grow out of
Sure.
that engagement.
Am I correct, did you say at the beginning that every town on the Cape except Wellfleet has a hired personnel, part of the local government?
One or more
One of them.
people, yes.
As positions or as
Yes, as
consultants?
positions. The only other town I'm aware of now that's doing it as a consultant is Truro. They recently hired a consultant, that's person, are you familiar with the Cloverleaf project?
Yes.
That was recently awarded in Truro. That's a person who worked on that project. And actually, it's a woman named Ladara Zola, and we have engaged her previously for other tasks. So she may be a candidate for this position as well.
So
Sounds
that's,
great.
that's the $75,000 number,
Okay, any other?
right?
No. So the next one is an application, and it's for $16,000, and it's from the Historical Commission.
Criminal 30,000, they're in the wrong column.
30,000, excuse me. They originally asked for 16, and we actually got them to increase it for, the project itself is that there are historical records about the oldest houses in Wellfleet.
They're
dating from
digitizing
about-
this.
The form-
Yes.
the Form B.
They're digitizing updating them.
Yeah, this has been going on for several years.
Exactly right. So what we suggested to them this year was, rather than hire the same consultant to do more of the same, can we look to hire some local Wellfletian that we could train to do this? And so in there is now money for an intern,
Okay.
so that longer term, we will be able to do it ourselves, and we would be creating some job
Okay.
in Wellfleet. So it grew from 16 to $30,000.
So how far along are they in digitizing?
Oh, I think they have literally hundreds to go.
You're right, it's
Yeah.
like 700 homes, and they've
It would
only,
be,
And they're going down.
it'd be an excellent
The
project.
key,
for
the
an
key
intern.
with those is that they need periodic revision. You know, they have a shelf life. And they're literally on a shelf in the library.
Okay.
there is one little third part, component to that. And they wanted to do another workshop. They had a very successful workshop at Preservation Hall on reaching out to people with historic homes and the value of not tearing down. So they wanted to do another one of those.
Is there a capital component to this? If you're digitizing stuff, I assume there's hard drives, systems, there's a piece of that that has to digitize.
Honestly, the only capital component to it that I'm aware of is the supplies for the notebooks and other things of that nature.
All of them
Yeah.
are on this thing called
Most of it is labor
Mac Doc or something, Mass Doc. It's all on, but the actual getting the,
Oh, so there are servers out there?
yeah, the state has that, so you can go online, you can
Got it.
see, if you know the Form B, you can go to it.
And these are all homes that were built before 1970?
No, before.
You're not that old, They're all built before we were all born. Okay, so the next item.
The next item you may or may not have on your list, we had a request from the Shellfish Committee, and that was to increase the usage or the seating and the development of a...
We don't have it, so.
Okay, of a bed near the Chequesset Yacht Club. We were very enthusiastic about it, but we've been informed by the state that for recreation, which is what that would be. It can only be for capital outlay, so they effectively nix that. So it may come up, you may hear something about it. We would love to have supported that, and we've encouraged them to come back and see if there's something they can do by way of a capital outlay, but it's not on the agenda for, or not on the warrant for this year. The next item is the Baker Field. And so some of you may know, right, exactly right, that there is essentially a tent-like cover that goes up every year. We now know that it was costing the town thousands of dollars a year to put it up, to rent it, put it up and take it down. So we encouraged the Recreation Department to come back with a proposal for a permanent structure, and have you already been through this?
We have heard about this, yes.
So when we heard about it, the Bakerfield Pagoda, they didn't have a figure attached or a source for the money?
Well, they said that they were applying to CPC for,
Oh, they said they were applying.
yeah, they did tell us that.
All right.
Which line item is that? Is that?
That's the
It's 54,000. And that is for the rec department to construct a permanent roof over the,
The roof of the uprights, the basic
yeah,
structure.
exactly right,
And then there are sides that will be removed that would come down, correct?
exactly right. Anyone have any questions about that? I understand that they have, they're going to or have been in front of the CONSCOM to make sure that that fits in with those requirements, but other than that, I don't think there's any opposition to that. Any questions?
Is there anything about maintenance and storage in that budget, or is that gonna be separate?
It's interesting, when they first came to us, it was to buy their own, but then hire someone to put it up and take it down, and now it's a semi-permanent one. We've encouraged them to go to the DPW and make sure that if it requires any maintenance, that they can accommodate that.
So that's TBD at this point.
DPW, to be determined, yes,
Yes.
right. But,
TBD by the DPW
yes, right.
and the great old, good old USA.
But my understanding is they have been to the DPW.
Okay. And then there's 100,000 for,
The Housing Trust, that's to fund programs like rental assistance. I'm happy to report that we're about to make our 4th or 5th award for a buy-down grant. Some of you may know that we, the Housing Authority, give a grant in the range of $150,000 plus or minus to help a qualified individual buy a home, an existing home in Wellfleet, and that becomes deed restricted so that it can't be sold for essentially more than what they paid for the house should they decide to sell it. So those monies go into things like that, and it's a contribution or an amount to go into the Housing Trust Fund. And the last item is $7,500, a relatively small amount of money. This is the 3rd year that the CDP, the Community Development Partnership in Eastham, will be having their Housing Institute. Maybe some of you have gone.
I took it this past year.
Dan has
It was
taken it.
really good.
Yeah, so this is the 3rd year that they are offering that. We've had 20 or 30 people from Wellfleet go, and
The first year it was not open to finance committee members, last year it was, so,
And what was that?
it's basically a 6-week seminar on affordable housing. It's 2.5 hours once a week for 6 weeks.
And what did you learn?
I learned it's not an easy process, it's slow and it's cumbersome, and that the most important thing you have to do before you even start looking at properties is to get community buy-in.
Is that taught by Stephanie Cox?
No.
you just, I'm sorry.
I was asking if it was taught by Stephanie Cox. I read it.
No,
Right.
Adana
A variety of speakers.
Variety of speakers,
It's
but it's
coordinated by
coordinated.
somebody, but there's different people
I see.
in every week to talk about different aspects.
And besides the 6 weeks, there's a quarterly peer group review meeting and advanced training for,
I don't think they've designed the advanced training.
well, it's
yet,
coming, that's part of this request.
So,
And
but it's, they basically, they run this program all up and down the Cape.
I was gonna say, it's a
So
regional
there's
thing.
several sessions, and they basically do two, like an afternoon and evening. The closest one, this past session was in Eastham at the library, but they have one in Harwich and a couple of further.
Right, I've heard of it, sounds
You know,
good.
Dan has taken it, others in the community. Other towns pay the same kind of
Right,
fee
everybody
to
contributes.
support it, so it's
Because it's
something
tuition
of
free,
a
so
regional approach.
you just need to, anybody who's interested just needs to go find the dates and sign up.
So, I'm happy to field any other questions. We actually have a good-sized balance still available to us going forward for next year.
But you can't, there's no mechanism for making other awards to people other than through town
If they
meeting, so.
donate.
it has-
At the fall town meeting, we theoretically have a second round of applications, and we could then
Right.
consider it at that time.
Let me just ask out in left field kind of a question. So the CPC money has always been separate from other money that the town government spends.
Right.
And I know we as a committee have talked about that there are now two opportunities that are, that the town will have a chance to collect revenue. One is the new, for lack of a better word, the Airbnb tax. And then the second is the local
Marijuana?
marijuana dispensaries. And so what, I'm just curious, so one of the things that we've talked about is any advice that you may have having a separate budget in the sense of setting up, when we're looking at some different ways of setting that up that would be different, so it just doesn't go into the general fund and get consumed.
Jeff, we have on any number of occasions advocated that some portion of the room tax be dedicated to specific purpose, so housing or whatever the town thinks is a primary need, as opposed to going into the general fund, because it's really the only way we'll build up enough money to have it impactful kinds of activities or building on it. So that's certainly an idea that we endorse. We've never actually talked about the marijuana tax, but perhaps that's in the same.
At some, I'm not sure if what,
So, are you aware of how CPC gets its,
the CPC gets their money differently.
it's also a warrant article, it's a standard article on the warrant every year for a transfer to this fund, and then they
Okay,
take
so
the
then-
applications and disperse it, so, there certainly may be a mechanism for funneling some of that information, and some of that money into this fund, but,
It's out in left field. It's just-
Yeah.
yeah.
Does everyone know that the CPC is an override on the real estate taxes, and it has been averaging between $400,000 and $500,000 per year in receipts. That does not include the quote-unquote state match. 2 years ago, Boston joined the CPC,
oh,
and so what used to be a match of about 2/3,
It's
and
now
now a
about
match
1/3.
about 1/4.
oh, yeah.
Because the money is distributed on a pro rata basis in the state, so it's had a tremendous impact on the
What we
amount
get.
of money, right, that we actually get.
So additional funds will be welcome if we can find a way,
Where do we stand with the 10% of the housing stock?
not even close.
I'm
Close on
happy to talk to that, because we're up next on the housing side, but
Right. If we
maybe I
can-
should answer any other questions you have on CPC, or anybody else from our group?
I've missed a couple of meetings, but you satisfied with the information you have for the pagoda at Bakersfield, or is it still a little?
I can email anybody the application or Pass around the picture, here's a picture.
Picture's nice.
Oh, you
It
got
took
the
a
picture?
little
You
while.
showed us.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
It's gotta be
so
improved.
Yeah.
it's,
Definitely.
Right.
it's actually not a bad idea.
Oh, it's a
The-
very good
The tent was not a particularly good idea, and this will,
Costly for what you got
Yeah.
in here, right?
Every year.
I remember it
over
was
and
eight,
over.
is it $8,000 or so a year? I
Close
think
to
was
it.
the-
Yeah.
was the cost,
And
so.
there was additional
54,000
cost
for
if
permanent,
there was a
yes.
storm coming in, it had to be
Yeah.
taken down an extra time. This
Well, and
thing,
conversely though, I mean, anything that's permanent now has to withstand a storm surge potentially.
That's one of the issues that we challenged them on as well, and so there is some language from the manufacturer that says, you know, it's rated for this and can withstand that.
Stands on
It
sonotubes.
would stand 100
it's,
So
yeah,
a
it's
lot of
basically
people-
got
140 miles
footings,
per hour.
it's got footings uprights and a
Yeah.
roof, and,
So
and,
many
there's a
pounds.
deck, but it, you know, it's not, the deck isn't anchored to the ground.
Right,
just
the deck isn't
footings.
part of the awning, it's,
Right, you can
it's,
take it off.
Yeah.
Definitely a dedication opportunity for the town, right?
Well, they'll also have a much longer time to use it, because they can use
Yes.
it into the fall, when before it was taken down the end of the summer, and that
Right.
was that. So they think it might be a revenue enhancer for town if weddings or groups want to rent it and be there. And I, for one, on CPC said, I think the town should be paying for this, especially if the town is going to get the revenue from these activities. And Becky,
Well,
Becky
That's all
told
still a
me-
pipe
The
dream.
town
I
is
know.
paying for it, it's coming out of
Yeah.
CPC funds.
well, it's a different pocket.
Yeah, but
taxpayer.
it's still,
Different.
the town is
It's,
still
it's
paying
the
for it.
town's taxpayers that are paying for this.
They are. And I think, all things considered, Becky felt this was really her best chance to have this happen. And we all agreed, after we considered things, that it was a great opportunity, so.
So, all right, well, we'll see
like
if
it.
it's possible to do that, but in any case, I think it's probably a better idea than the tent.
I don't think, right?
I
I think
just,
people that have gone to the tent, I think it's just gonna be great.
the idea of owning a tent and having the rec department in charge of it was not sitting real well with me. I think a semi-permanent structure is gonna be better. So, okay, well, thank you, and let's move on to the next part of this. So we're talking about 95 Lawrence Road. I don't know if it'll be visible on camera, but you have a copy that you can
Gary,
post it to the website?
yes, we certainly can
Talk
post
to
it
the
to the
board.
website.
Improvement.
Or projector, what would you like?
I would just assume not deal with the technology, it takes a long time.
Can we just,
I mean,
is it on the
unless,
screen? Can we like look at the screen on the table?
We have it as a handout as
Oh,
well.
okay.
better,
Oh, okay.
my
I
experience.
thought we were talking about trying to project it, which is, yeah.
Yeah. I saw you coming.
I don't remember this. How much of people get allowed?
Everybody,
You have one? We need, Linda, you have one?
Does
does everyone
We need
have
one
one?
more.
You can have mine if I.
Great. You can have it
I'll
back.
share, I'll share. Here, do you need it for the presentation? You can share with
I
Fred.
can talk to it.
You can share.
You
Did
can,
this. Am I doing that one? Okay.
Who needs this
I'm
one?
sitting right
No,
here.
we're good.
Right.
Thank you, Sharon.
Just come right up here. So, I have another one, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're all set, I believe. Oh, you want
Can I
yours
take
back?
mine back?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yours is, this is thicker. Good. Okay, right.
It's in color too.
Okay.
Oh, it's double sided, I see.
Yes, they have that now. So,
So, go ahead.
well, I'm just gonna, so you have received the information about the, back up a second. I'm Barry Sorkin, and now I'm here as the chair of the Local Housing Partnership and a member of the Housing Authority.
And I'm Sharon Ruhlager, and I'm co-chair of the Local Housing Partnership.
I'm Richard Ciotti, I'm with the Housing Authority.
And Dan, what warrant article is this dealing with?
So I think the disposition of town-owned property
It's
and
42, Dan.
it.
Transfer of
Transfer
town
town
land
land
housing, there are two articles.
41.
42 is what article this is gonna be.
Alright, so 42 is gonna be 95 Lawrence Road.
And that'll be the first thing that we'll talk about. So just because everyone got the original packet with our request from the Housing Authority for the property, or should I walk you through?
Walk us through
Okay.
briefly.
So we submitted a request to Dan and to the Board of Selectmen for the transfer of a portion of the land at 95 Lawrence Road, which is the town-owned land that is opposite the school. And that land includes the ball field and water tank and its access.
No, it doesn't include
No, excuse me. So the 9+ acres include the ball field and the water tower. So the map that you see here
Yep,
identify.
this is the right of way and the water tower here,
Exactly right.
and this is the ball field.
And the ball field,
Yeah.
for everyone, so the ball field is here, the water tower is the dark, right here, the school is over here.
Right.
And Gary, the building that we all know is where?
You see where it says 1? Are you talking about the old COA?
Yes, that,
Yes.
to orient,
That-
okay.
Yeah, that's-
so
okay, good,
Number 1
yep.
is the
Got it.
old COA, 2 is the land adjacent to that, which wasn't actually part of the old COA. And then number 3 is the land that goes from the water tower around to where the temporary police station was, and then down to Long Pond Road.
Back to, down to Gull Pond Road?
Long Pond.
Long Pond Road. Oh, I see, yeah,
Okay, everybody?
Yep.
So the Housing Authority has those parcels, those 3 parcels, which actually we have for the sake of the warrant article, have consolidated into 2. So 1 and 2 have been combined, and then the other one being 3. If you
So
look
you're
at the actual-
you're proposing to take the existing building site as well?
Exactly. And so those 3 things equal approximately 4 acres. And you can see it says 25,000, 16,000, and 127,000 square feet is the size of those parcels. So the request is to transfer that land to the Housing Authority for the purpose of developing affordable housing. And then we prepared a presentation why we think that's a good idea and what we can do with the land if we receive it. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to walk you through that, and you have copies of the slides. So any questions about the actual request and the land?
I'm just
In
curious,
question.
the ownership of the land belongs to the town, and it's controlled, just like certain land is controlled by the Open Space Committee, etc. This is completely owned by the town, completely controlled in perpetuity by the Housing Authority.
No.
It would be if this
If this transfer.
article
That's
goes
what I'm
through a
asking,
town
yeah.
meeting, yes.
Not dissimilar from other projects then. That is the standard process
Okay.
by which the Housing Authority has developed
Okay.
affordable housing, is that town-owned land is transferred to the Housing Authority. We would then go out for RFP on it and make an award, and either retain ownership of the land and lease it to the developer, or transfer it to the developer, depending upon a variety of factors.
And do you have an estimate of how many units you?
We
Yes.
can talk about
So that's
that.
gonna come up.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I'll try to keep this brief, and I know you're short on time.
We're now.
So, we just want to highlight a few of the facts from the 2017 Housing Needs Assessment and Action Plan, which, for example, the 25 to 44-year-old age range has decreased by 62% since 1990 to 2015. So we're hemorrhaging young people. In that same time, the older population is increasing. Nothing wrong with that, but it would be nice to have a balance. The median income family could likely afford a home of about $180,000 at 95% financing, while the median priced home is $468,000. Vacancy rate in 2015 was 0%. A year-round lower range two-bedroom market rate rental is about $1,400, which at 30% of income would require an income of about $64,000. The median income earning renter at around $22,000 could afford a rent of only about $351. So a very high percentage of our renters in Wellfleet are what's called cost burdened. They're paying more than 30% of their income, and quite a few of them are paying more than 50% of their income, which leaves very little for other things. According to a local realtor, at one point in 2017, there were 14 homes in Wellfleet for sale over $1 million, and only one for sale under $400,000. So, in order to support and sustain our year-round community, we need housing options that are affordable to a range of incomes and appropriate to the needs of residents at all stages of life. Some of these other slides you can look at, in your own terms, sort of how housing prices, both ownership and rental, are increasing much faster than income. And in the past 6 years, Cape Cod in general has lost 3,000 year-round units and gained 5,000 seasonal homes. So according to the Housing Assistance Corporation, the housing shortage is caused by things that we probably know. Purchasing power of seasonal homeowners is higher than local people who are interested in buying. And the seasonal rental is robust and generally precludes any kind of year-round rental. So one of the things that I think is very, there's a typo on there, I think. The lack of housing options creates labor shortages and affects the local economy. So this is kind of a bottom line thing. It's that according to the Housing Assistance Corporation, this is affecting our economy and will affect our economy in the long run, so that employers will not be able to find people to work for them.
And those employers include our police and fire departments, by the way.
Exactly. And eventually we will be paying more and more for less available goods and services. So the housing production goals from the 2017 report was that we needed 60 affordable units for rental.
Can I stop you there for a moment? I just want to clarify something. People hear the words affordable housing, and for most people, those words have pretty negative connotations because they are picturing the very lowest income people. And that is not what this is. This is essentially workforce housing, and it is designed to fit within the budget of starting salaries. So these are people who want to live in the town where they work or in an adjacent town, or and they're employed and they are working people and they need a place to live that they can afford. So the word affordable housing.
You can see.
So wait, I don't understand.
Okay.
I thought this is confusing because you're talking about market rate housing.
So
No, what you're looking at here on this slide, is at the top of page 3.
That's from the consultant's words, okay, from
Right.
2017
So,
report.
one of the things they talked about in that house.
So does this exclude seniors?
No, not at all.
But
Actually,
then,
it's
but
quite
Janet
the
just said,
opposite.
but Janet just said that this means people who are working.
If you
Sure.
would let us move a little bit further, I think maybe we'll explain some
All
of
right.
this.
Okay. I'd like
And,
that.
and this is why we've used the term community housing in general over the term affordable housing.
I think
Anything
that's a better,
preferable
yeah, I
to
think that's
affordable.
Right.
a better.
Community housing's a much better word. Thank you.
Okay, so basically, we're proposing, as you know, the transfer of the land to the Wellfleet Housing Authority so that we, for the purposes of developing community housing. And 95 Lawrence Road is the only or one of, well, we don't know of any other pieces of property that are over 4 acres that are town-owned at this point.
That are on town water.
And, well, even not being on town water, and this is on town water. So, basically, I'll skip over some things, but the coastal engineering feasibility study that we had commissioned by Massachusetts Housing Partnership paid for it, and that was presented in December of 2018. And they state that there's a capacity for 90 bedrooms, that's not units, 90 bedrooms on this property without going to the next step up septic system, which would require on-site sewage treatment. We don't want to get into that. It's accessible on both Long Pond Road and Lawrence Road. It's on town water. All utilities are accessible. Additionally, it's a relatively level site, which some of you may know, housing has had a hard time finding level sites to build on. It's walkable to the elementary school and public transportation. And also you can get to town center without crossing a road, which
I think
is
it's a great property.
amazing.
It really
It's
is
a
a
really
great,
good
great
site.
property.
So we are not at this point proposing any design solutions, we can't do that. But we would like to just say,
We can't do that for legal.
right,
When we put out the RFP, we can't prejudice what responses or
Right.
responders may do. And so in that sense, we have to be fairly generic.
but we do have some ideas.
Can I ask you one quick question
Yes.
around what I think that might apply to, vaguely to design? On the bottom of this page, it
Yes.
says that affordable housing density can be as little, it appears, as 2,000 square feet per unit. What kind of unit would that be? Would that be a tiny house? Or would
2,000
that
square
be?
foot
It
unit?
could be a,
Yeah, huge.
That's not actually,
That's
that's,
not
It's not
tiny.
that
That's
small.
not tiny.
It's small if you have property around it.
No,
It's
no,
40 by
no.
40, it's 45 by 45 roughly, to get to
Uh,
2,000 square feet.
Yes, but this is not ownership that is being envisioned here,
These are
but rent.
all
Rentals.
And
rentals.
so in terms of square footage, Fred, you know, a typical studio.
It could be an apartment.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly right. A
That's
typical
all I was
studio is
asking.
600, a one-bedroom is 900
Yeah,
or
but they're
1,000.
different.
I lived in a 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot apartment for years.
No, I just wanted to be clear that it was an apartment, not a little house
Correct.
on
Right.
2,000 square feet,
No, yeah, the rental.
which would be okay
And
with me,
the,
by
and
the
the
way.
designers will come up with a whole bunch of different.
Exactly,
Yeah, they will.
and we
been
have to
involved in
abide
some.
by all the zoning bylaws, so
Yeah,
all of, I
and
think,
state requirements
How,
for affordable.
What is the zoning for this location?
Good question, we were at the planning board last night, and so the question would be, would it be local 40B, would it be local cluster zoning, would it be state 40B? And because in general, zoning in Wellfleet would not allow
Correct,
that kind of density.
Yeah. So that's something that needs to get ironed out before we send out our
But
RFP.
that's-
It would be,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it would be part of that.
that goes in, yeah, that'll,
right.
the local zoning will go into the RFP when you.
And anyone
Well,
who
it's
responds
better
to
if
it
the
will.
zoning gets ironed out before they have, it'll make the proposals.
It'll make the proposal cleaner. No,
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some ideas, some things that we've been thinking about that we'd like to see included in this housing project. And so if you just look at this current ideas, we'd like to plan for a mix of sizes.
On page 6 at the top. You will see this.
No, that's page 7.
7?
Mine is, oh,
It's
it's
six.
yours at 6, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd like to plan for a mix of sizes, so 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and varying income levels. Okay, and I'll explain that with the Cloverleaf project in a second, that will be a good example. We'd like to define and meet the housing needs across the years. So some of that means 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Some of them will be accessible. A variety of different things should be taken into consideration in the design.
Can I just interrupt for a second? To answer your question, is we cannot specify it for seniors, but we can design
I see.
for seniors. And that's our hope, is that, two things, is we hope that if we are successful in getting the land, we'll have a visioning process where everybody in the community will have an opportunity to have their input and say, this is what I think we need, et cetera, and that's how I'd like it to look. But in that process, and we've learned from other communities, is that we can interview seniors and say, this is an ideal design, whether that's ADA or whether that is group home or whatever it may be. And it may be possible for us to spec in our RFP some things that will be particularly of interest to seniors.
The thing is that there are a lot of people who hold on to big houses because
Right.
there's no place affordable for them to
Exactly
move
right.
to, so that's,
Is there, in your opinion, enough property that you could, I'm looking at the Cloverleaf design too, but I think this
Right.
applies to all kinds of projects like this, including the one in Eastham where there's a commons area.
Yes.
There may be a little dog park, there may be a place where people can
Exactly
hang out.
right.
Is there enough property without eating into your expectations about units to make that available, do you
Yeah.
think?
Fred, the answer is it's a balancing act between density and design.
Sure.
And so I think when we go through our visioning process, then that's one of the things that we really have to articulate is how much green space. And now, appreciate that right around you is the ball field,
right.
and right around you is that water tower open space. So it adds to the feel, if not the actual. So you may be able to accommodate a little greater density.
The designs I've seen for other places have been pretty good about
Yeah.
incorporating green space.
Yeah.
Who is opposed, who do you foresee opposing this, and what's the actual costs to the town and to the taxpayers?
Okay, I don't know who will oppose it, but, you know, all of the people who, not in my backyard, and will it fit into the character of the town, and why do we need that? But I can answer the second question fairly straightforward. We anticipate that there will be no additional cost burden to the town for the construction of this property. So the funding of this comes from state and local resources that the developer can tap into, the proceeds from the rents, and some amount of bank financing, a mortgage, on the property, which will be held by the developer. So it's our expectation, and we don't know what will be delivered, but we can say that the successful Truro Cloverleaf project is approximately $12 million, and it is for 41 units, I think. And the cost of that, and I can, if you like, I can provide you with the financial feasibility study for it. But
I think it's premature.
yeah, but anyway, the vast majority of the money comes from tax credit funding and from other state and county resources.
I will say that you cannot actually do the local preference piece. That's not permitted in these.
Well, you can do a certain percentage.
Not 100% sure that's true.
Can I?
We're getting away from that.
Yeah, we're getting away from that.
Yeah.
We're really.
We're getting away
So
from
let's
the
just say
scope
it
and
gets
finance.
developed, then they'll
Right.
be paying property taxes, right? So there'll be
The
revenue.
developer.
will be
Yeah.
Right.
Paying.
Yes, and-
So it's
Individual.
taking a
And
piece
there's-
of land right now that the town doesn't get any money from, and turning it
Yeah.
into a piece of
Right.
land.
A revenue piece where
Plus,
people are coming in
if you
and they're
think
living,
about
they're
it-
paying
Live there,
taxes,
will
they're
shop
hooking
and
up to
work.
town water, they're, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, and people who live there will shop and.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of
and-
job
Plus-
creation associated with bringing in, not to mention the stabilization of the school population. We hope to attract a fair number of families to this. So I think it has some significant financial benefits to the town rather than costing the town money.
Absolutely.
Do you think it has any impact on town services in terms of load? You know, the fire department's busier, the DPW's busier, or whatever,
they'll be right.
that requires more people, more time.
Anybody who moves in, I suspect, has that.
Everybody, yeah.
They're close to the
Man,
fire
but-
department, so.
And
Sure,
there's
sure.
good access, so.
And I
Put
think a
it,
lot
speaking
of,
on the water
Yeah.
I
tower.
think a lot of the people who will be living here are people who have been, looking for places to live in Wellfleet.
We've got the Outer Cape people, we've got the town employees.
I mean, they're already here,
The
is what I'm
teachers.
saying.
Right.
They're just living.
And I guess without boiling the ocean on this, because we could do it, we could spend the next 5 hours talking about the future of the town, attracting young people, keeping young people, stopping young people from going away. And a lot of the data we've seen in, like for the school data and whatever, suggests that families are moving off Cape because the school population has been going down and is anticipated to continue to go down. So you do the math to say their parents are probably leaving with them, right? So there's that. But one of the questions I always have and I think affordable housing in general is a good idea, so I'm not saying that. But it begs the bigger question of what is going to keep young people on the Cape? If they have a place to live that's affordable, that's a good thing, but do they have a life here? Do they have things to do? Do they have, jobs and da-da-da? So it's kind of hard to answer that question. It's possible, right?
Right.
So,
But I can speak to it in one sense, and maybe Dan will comment on it, but, we have an ongoing turnover problem where we recruit and hire relatively young people into the police and fire and into municipal positions. And they can't afford to buy a home here, and they get an offer from another town. And we've invested a considerable amount of money in that training and development of that person who then moves on. And that turnover rate is very expensive for the town in general. So one of the things that and I don't mean to say things that we can't deliver, but there has been a little discussion about, can we provide some support for municipal employees? And what we are envisioning in our community housing, as opposed to strictly affordable housing, is that we would have some at 100% of median income and some at market rate. So that would be
Similar to the
addressing,
Cloverleaf.
addressing multiple needs.
so there might be set-asides in the units dedicated to the fire department or the police department or municipal.
My understanding is you can do that,
You can't do
but
that.
it may be possible that the fire department can do something by way of a stipend to help with that, but again.
The other thing
Okay.
is that in terms of local preference, whether it be municipal employees or, local residents, is that's in the initial lottery to occupy the units. But as people move out, then they then become available to first come, first serve.
Okay.
So if there's a firefighter who's waiting for, a rental unit,
I think we're really ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
think that we should be focusing our attention on a piece of
Financing.
land. Is it
Yes.
a good idea?
I
And let
think it's a
them-
great
I'm gonna
idea.
give you one great stat that we learned today. We met with the Truro folks. Sally's Way, which is a 16-unit apartment complex that they built in Truro next to the
So, yeah.
yeah, some of you may have seen it. So 15 of the 16 people who filled the apartments were either from Wellfleet, Truro, or P-Town.
Nice.
Right,
And
and
so
I
that
would
really
expect to
is
see a similar mix.
that is really, we think, the likely outcome. No one can say what it will be, but if that is a predictor, it's pretty positive.
I have a 24-year-old kid that's paying 4 times in rent to live in Wellfleet than I did in my first apartment.
Yeah,
And he's not making much more than I started making
yeah.
when I started at
So-
24 years old.
and he
So-
wants to stay.
And he desperately wants to stay. So I'm living it.
I have one question that I need to address to Dan. And that is that there have been discussions for other uses for that existing building site. Have those been abandoned, or are we going to now throw our weight behind? I mean, how are you feeling about?
So I asked the building needs and assessment chair, Mr. Chakanian. At one point, they had issued a report of what needs existed in the town. He is out of town right now, will be out of town for about a week yet, but he will send me that report as soon as he gets back into town.
Okay.
Are you talking about the athletic field proposal with the rec department?
No, I'm just talking about the former COA site. So we're talking about dropping a prefab down on that existing foundation at some point for
Rec.
other use, not rec, for,
Oh,
Record
town annex.
storage.
yeah, and
Annex,
possibly some office space, but
No,
I'd love to
That's-
see an opportunity to generate some income on a level
Yeah.
flat space that's just crying to have something done with it.
And can I go back? The water is one of the keys.
Sure.
It's a,
I heard Jerry, I don't want to quote Jerry, he's not here, so, but I heard him say that any town-owned land that's on water ought to go to housing for that reason, because if we don't, then we are restricted to the 10,000
you got a different
per
density.
square foot, yes.
That's why I asked
Exactly
about the
right.
2,000 actually.
Exactly
Yeah.
right, so the water, the availability of water on this land is one of the keys to it being suitable for, particularly suitable for housing.
Helen's got Jim up there.
I'm
Um,
sorry, Helen.
Yeah, relevant to that, we have a lot of water in our municipal system. However, and I spoke with Jim Hood, the chair of the Board of Commissioners. It's essential that every time there's a proposal to add substantial units, that they take a look at the capacity of the water system.
and has that been done?
Why does that have to be brought up here? Because, remember, if you go past what you should reasonably use from the resource for the water system, we will have to have another expansion. On the other hand, what's good about this is, these would be year-round users, and the water tank is not getting enough flow through year-round. So that's all I know about that.
Okay.
Well, at our last meeting, they said that they have a capability of, what was it, 526? And earlier, 250.
Yeah, we're
275
well
more, I think.
under.
We're well
under
under the, I don't
total.
think that's, yeah.
Well, yes and no, because what's not being used now is every time you want to add units, you have to compute all the units in the original system, which Elaine McElroy and I did a year and a half ago. In other words, these are just numbers. All I have to do is run the numbers and then be able to say at town meeting,
Well, we,
Well, it's town-owned land, so I mean, let's get it and see if it's feasible to do the project and go from there.
And
I
I-
mean,
I
I don't
certainly
think, I
think
think
that-
we're well
I
beyond,
certainly
you know, we're into minutia at this point,
yeah,
that's well beyond the
some
scope
number of
the-
units is certainly going to be feasible, whether it's, whether it's slightly more, or fewer is the question.
And there's no other large parcel in town like
That
this
we know.
that's available.
So just for clarification, to Janet's point before that she asked Dan, if I recall, and I think it was last town meeting, or 2 town meetings, I'm losing track, but there was
Last
a
spring.
warrant, there was an article about using, I believe, this piece of property, the old COA building, as an administrative
Yeah.
building, that got turned down.
Just the
annex.
just the.
Parcel one,
that's- Yeah,
right?
parcel one, correct.
Because some people eloquently said, no, we need it for affordable housing, or community housing, however we're calling it. This is the next step down that road, so to speak, where we're formalizing that the use will be for housing. Is that correct? So
Yes.
if the town does this, then we have pointed an arrow saying this and nothing else, essentially. Is that right? We're basically saying it's a housing site now.
So,
And we will go forward with getting bids from a developer and getting all the zoning permits and all of that, but this ball starts rolling down that hill at that point.
As of now, the answer is yes. Just as it happens, we're actually meeting with Dan and the chair of the select board tomorrow, talk about that very issue, but yes.
Because last year seemed like a conceptual vote,
did.
this seems much more concrete.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and can I go back to, Steve had raised a question about our, the payment of the 10%, and so, It's an ugly statistic. Wellfleet is about 2% meeting the DHCD, the state's affordable housing goal. We have the worst record on
We
it.
do.
Yep.
So we are in desperate need of affordable, everyone knows the issue about young people in school. But in the 20 years or so since Fred Bell Way, we have produced six units of year-round affordable housing,
Rental.
rental.
Um,
So the
Aren't
need
there, Gary,
is great
units
and
that aren't being recorded?
what?
Aren't there many units in which people are living that aren't counted?
That's a different
Can't,
issue.
that's a different issue. I don't know that, I don't know that anybody knows the number.
But
of what he
but
did.
it's
we
with
can't
this.
count those
No,
towards
but
our.
I'm talking about formally that we have produced,
Mhm.
and that are, in fact, in perpetuity, going to be affordable rentals that people can count on.
The good news is, when you look at what happened in Eastham, what we're doing, and what's happening
Yes.
in Truro, what we're
The ball is
proposing here,
moving.
we're seeing the greatest increase since I've been around, and it's the first time we've really seen a bump in available housing.
And the
Also,
units
also
are
this,
fabulously developed and they look great and
Are
people
we gonna
are
vote on
grabbing the
this now?
concept
Are
and,
we
yep.
voting?
I'm
But I
sorry.
just have a
Not
question
right,
though,
I'm
so the 2% that we're at, how does that hurt the town in terms of grant money or? Have we lost out on anything
Not
because we're not
yet.
really near it?
Well, I don't know that I know the answer to that, Steve, in terms of what effect. What it does say is any town that is at the 10% is free from certain restrictions.
40B.
And, even if we build this in its entirety, we won't
my,
come close to that.
and also this, people are beginning to look at these 10% numbers by, they're beginning to look at them more on a regional basis. So the project in Eastham to which we've contributed,
Yeah.
that sort of, that helps us as well, and this project, is gonna, it's beginning, especially with all these little towns out here, they're beginning to look at these more regionally, and that formula may be adjusted in that way, but in any case, the need is acute.
I would
Haven't
think
been making
getting
much progress.
a lot
Yeah.
more people directly tied into the water system is really healthy for the water system.
Yes. So I have.
But your point is well taken, that we have to really, and there are any number of engineering hurdles, so we need to make sure that we're dotting the i's and
Yeah,
crossing.
but having a well-defined demand is, I think,
Right.
a really key thing. So.
Yeah,
But
I
there are
have,
public
Helen, if you could hold off, please. I have one question for you, though. Pending the recommendation from the Building Needs Committee,
Mhm.
have you considered the possibility of taking parcels 2 and 3 and excluding 1?
Again, we are meeting with.
Is that something that you're willing to consider?
It's always a balancing act when I trade off.
It is a balancing act, and there are needs, I mean, housing is an acute need, but there may be others, and we will not see that report until.
Yeah.
Right.
I would only say that any carving up of the site that we do limits what a developer is going to be able to
Understood.
put on that site, so.
Understood, but depending on what the report from the Building Needs Committee is, I just would like to ask you to consider having a backup plan. Okay?
Okay,
Well, one last question, if you gotta go today, how many years do you think it is before you actually are opening doors?
so it would.
Well, I mean, are we talking ballpark, 5, 10, 15, 1?
Between 5 and 10.
I would just say 5 and 7 years, I mean,
I think Truro, the Cloverleaf project, they're hoping to have it up and running by 2022.
Right, but how long has it been in the works?
There are
Right,
some
but-
developers who have developed these homes with prefab houses that you wouldn't tell that were prefab, and they're getting them done in 7 and 8 months.
you're right, the actual,
So some of the, it depends what the
Construction,
right.
construction is gonna look like, because on a prefab, you can order X number of units, they come in one day, build them up and do it, so
But
there's a
that, the
difference.
actual construction phase is
actually.
not.
No, I
not
understand,
where all
but
the
I'm
time
just-
is.
But there are, that's a,
Can I just give you the counterpoint, which is that Payne Hollow, which is a project that we voted on 17 years ago, not one brick has been laid.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to project, depending upon what.
Yeah, I'm not
transpires,
asking you to like
Yeah, but I think the.
sign off on it. It's
Yeah, the
I was just curious because
Right.
we're having this conversation here in
Right.
2019. Are we having this conversation 10 years from now, or are we?
This is
You know,
this is
saying
one
what-
of the things I learned at the Housing Institute, is that this stuff takes a long
Right.
time to
And-
get off the ground.
And the other caveat is, sometimes the biggest is getting the funding in place. So, you apply for these various grants, sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're successful the following year, so there are many caveats to it.
Getting back to Ira's question, it's up to the committee whether you actually will vote on this or not, you know, you
I
usually
was just
vote
trying
on.
to move the discussion.
I know you were,
Yeah.
I know you were.
Thank you.
It's, you know, whether you consider that this has a financial impact, it's not going to cost the town, you could consider it a financial impact if you feel like it's gonna generate revenues to the town,
Yeah.
so.
So I would like to wrap this up at this point.
I'll just ask you one question.
You may.
What is your vision for that piece that you're concerned about?
Well, there was discussion last year, as you recall,
Oh,
of reusing that foundation
Right,
for a building for the town. Dan just informed us that he's requested information from the Building Needs Committee, which he will not have until the
Right.
chair is back. I would like to see what they have to say.
but going back to that same purpose, or whatever it happens to be.
You know, it is a balancing act, and I think it would be, I mean, I personally would like to see that. It's not that I don't support community housing, I really do. But I just would like to see what the Building Needs Committee has to say. Because the possibility does exist that both things could happen.
Well, why don't we wait till that's before us?
That's,
Sure. That's right.
that's,
Because
yes,
what's
that
your
is what I was, that's my
And are
proposal.
we gonna weigh in on this article?
Well, not tonight.
No, but I mean, when it comes time to vote.
We're gonna have to weigh in on whether we're gonna weigh in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Good idea.
we will have that discussion.
because if not, then we just should be.
Meet next week.
Okay.
Talk about it for 2 hours.
You want to talk about Thanks, Liam. Do you want to talk about the other request for the 2 lots by Professor, or is that? Brings us up to speed.
Welcome back.
It's, is that also on the table for community housing?
Will that bring revenue to the town?
So that's so there's another town-owned housing
Yeah, it's up
proposal
there
on
by,
here, and those are,
2 lots that are near Pleasant Neck Road,
Yeah.
people know, and Freeman Summit. They.
Good luck with the neighbors.
Do you want, do you want to give me 2 minutes?
this is gonna be another,
You know?
housing project, and how's the site for building? Big problems or good sites?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Keep in mind, none of this has been put on the warrant yet.
Right.
It's on the
Follow
draft
plan.
one.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop us from talking about it.
Okay,
You know what?
Only if it's bringing revenue
I
to the
think,
town.
I
We're
think
happy to come
in
back.
the interest of town, Helen, unless it's pertinent, like,
It is pertinent.
okay.
Yeah, the select board voted 2 against the lower lot for environmental reasons. In other words, we
One
voted,
closer to town,
what?
a lot closer to
The
town.
one closer to Chequasit Neck Road and
Oh,
that's
and
lower
that
down.
Chequasit.
You're just, that's all that I wanted
Do you
to
have
say.
do you have a site plan for that?
I can tell you that we have asked for a septic plan for the site, which I think is the big, that particular.
I think it's
Shall
premature
we,
for the.
we can come back
finance
another
committee to-
time, right, and speak to you about it when we have more information.
We can, yeah, because we can always hold our
Right.
recommendation,
Right, it's a much smaller discussion.
yeah. This one is much farther along in the process, so that's
Very
great.
good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down the phone anyway.
Great stuff.
Found out all the scores.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, you do? Look at you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank
you.
you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so prepared.
All right. Before we move on to other things, I've been asked for the finance committee to attend a joint meeting with the select board on Monday, March 4th. No. This is, you know, because we didn't participate in the December meeting, but I think we're in a much better position now to actually discuss with the select board our,
Plus we have a lot
or
more
we
lead
will be
time.
by the 4th.
Yeah, we have a lot more lead time. Last time it was like a really short window.
Yeah, and we hadn't had a chance to review the budget yet. We wouldn't have had anything really to add to the conversation at that point.
What time is it?
It's
It would be
gonna
at 6 PM start.
6 o'clock.
The meeting itself is only to discuss the warrant. There's nothing else on the agenda but just to discuss the warrant.
And that also is huge for us.
I haven't seen the one.
Alright, can you send me
So-
a reminder? I don't have my phone.
Yes. What's your, I'll send you a text.
So this is a special,
What is your phone number?
why don't you write it down so it's not on video?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't gonna give you the right one.
Everybody calling you.
All right,
So Monday, March 4th,
Monday, March 4th, 6 o'clock.
in the COA?
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
in this building. What they really want is they want to hear your opinions.
Right, which,
They want to hear your discussion and your talk about it.
but they don't want to watch the video.
About
Well,
what? About the warrant article?
No,
Helen watches all the videos.
I know.
so
No,
to
I
watch
would
the
have
discussion.
been up for not doing that this year. The other thing that I feel is essential is that we meet around a table so we can look at each other and you guys can interact in the good way that you interact. Because these meetings, where it's a select board meeting and you're sitting way over in Truro on the other side of the room, there's something about it that does not work for me, and we used to do it the way I would like to do it, around a table with the FinCom back in the early 2000s. It really worked. You know, we were all equal.
Right. And also the,
Separate but equal.
having a meeting that's dedicated just to this.
Just to that.
And also, at this point in the process, when we've actually reviewed
Yes.
so much of the budget, as opposed to in December, where we haven't really had the chance to do that.
What is the format of the meeting going to be? Are we actually going to move step by step through the warrant, or are we gonna like have a
This
free
is our
range
opportunity
discussion?
to act as the advisory committee.
Well, I
So
really,
what I foresee happening at this meeting, and this was how we were gonna set it up prior to them wanting you to be there,
Mhm.
is the select board would have the agenda, or the warrant in front of them.
as we will.
And they, yep, you will all have it in front of you. The select board would say, I move to insert Article 1 into the warrant, which is the budget, and move to recommend that article. And, you know, they would then issue a vote, that's what goes into the warrant. I think what they would like to hear is you have a discussion at the same time, you know, obviously the budget is the biggest one, but there are some things that would be more controversial than the budget. And I'll bring up like 3 Kendrick Avenue when they have that discussion. They'd like to hear what you think about 3 Kendrick Avenue before they make their recommendations.
Am
So
I-
it will actually be going through every article, and everybody has the opportunity to give their thoughts on that article.
I would like to see us actually have our discussions and vote on these things going into this meeting, so that we don't have to go through the procedural stuff with the select board. We can simply act in advisory. This is how we voted, this is why, and they can hear both the you know, they can hear any dissenting.
But
So
we
what
don't
is
have
the-
an awful lot of
We don't
time
have
for
enough
that.
time to do
It's
that.
only one meeting.
So let me ask you this, so that we're gonna get copies of all the warrant articles
Well-
before this meeting, right?
We have the cheat sheet.
Yeah, that's just the index.
So
That's
the
index
warrant-
article.
has been sent out once already. I have not printed up hard copies just because I hate killing
Okay.
trees, but I am happy to print up a hard copy for each one of you
I
and
don't
have it
want a
in
hard
Rebecca.
copy. I'll
So
take it
I'm willing to
electronically.
send you an electronic
Yeah,
one.
that's what I want.
If you want a hard copy, let me know and I'll print it up
How
and
many
put it in
pages is it?
Rebecca's
How many
office.
pages is this year?
It's probably about 40.
I want a hard copy.
So we have one meeting before the 4th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean, we
That's
need
right,
it.
So
yeah,
we
so,
could, so we could spend the rest of this meeting discussing, my hope is to get through the operating budget and the enterprise funds.
so I have so we're gonna talk about these, make a vote, have a vote now on these, and then go to the selectmen's meeting, and then affirm our vote? What if there's a change of vote because something
But
comes
it's
up with
their, but
selectmen's?
they're,
It's their-
but they are, but this is what I don't understand.
So this
Because
is-
they are putting, it's their warrant to put things on the warrant. I mean, we are, I think that
We're-
it's very nice that we would have our opinion as we are supposed to have our opinion and we're supposed to weigh in on financial articles. But why are we getting into the mix? That's their job that's their job to put things on the warrant. They're the Board of Selectmen.
They wanna hear why.
They
We
want.
think
if
the way we think.
If we oppose, if we support or oppose something, they.
But that shouldn't
That shouldn't be, yeah, but
matter.
you're,
It's their warrant. In the charter, it's their warrant.
It is.
It's their budget that comes.
You're an advisory board.
No, we're
member.
not. We're not an advisory board at all. We are the finance committee. We have
Well, that's what the,
specific
that's what the
charter
finance
okay,
and
committee is.
state ordered, not goals,
I would
but
prefer to not do it
responsibilities.
twice, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. I would prefer to not have a jam-packed meeting to go through the budgets and then go through them again. I would like to select either, I think I would like to select one or the other. Does that
For
that
my
make me-
personally, I would rather that we do what we always do, which is go through the warrant, the way the FinCom has always
Always
gone
done,
through the
and-
warrant, and we know each other and we know
and we can have recommendations?
we have a certain history with talking about certain issues.
Yeah.
And we can recall those issues,
Mhm.
because we've all been very good at coming to these meetings.
Mhm.
So it
So,
would be, I mean, it would be desirable to avoid going to town meeting and having something like 3 Kendrick and have a unanimous select board voting in one direction and a unanimous finance committee voting in the opposite. It would
But
be
that's what
nice.
it, but that's what it is. I mean, I
I
don't
think,
think
but
it's
what they're
gonna
saying
be.
is, can that be discussed before?
but
I
that,
don't
that's
think they're
like,
gonna
but that's what we're supposed to be
Be
doing.
doing. I don't think anybody's supposed to convince anybody else
Yeah.
to doing something as a committee and a
Yeah.
body. We're
And
looking
if-
at financial issues.
If we
maybe
wanna go to their
things
meeting
for
and they would like to
solidifying
come
that.
to our meeting, everybody's welcome to do
Alright,
that. They're open
we
meetings.
can spend a lot of time arguing about this, but on the one hand, I agree with you, Ira, that the select board's job is to vote to put articles on the warrant so that they can be considered at town meeting. And the thing is that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody on the select board supports the article.
Then why shouldn't they say that at town meeting?
Well, that's a good question.
The vote is
Which
on.
they
And
will.
is
They
that,
may vote an article onto the warrant because they feel that town meeting voters have the right.
To
to
do
vote
it,
on
but they
it,
don't,
yes.
yeah.
They may not necessarily agree that they want it passed, but they do feel that the town meeting voters should have the right to vote.
and are you speaking to that directly?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am. What I would most like is for us all to listen to each other, the two boards, right? And then make our recommendations, because your questions and your reasoning and the things you bring up are not the same as what the select board does. And very often I find them more detailed, and it's very useful. And, you know, it's just a different show in the two boards. And to have you, I don't want to make our recommendations before I know what you guys think about things. Why do you think I'm sitting here, right? I really,
But you have to have,
you're
but Helen,
very
you have to,
useful.
but you have to have the courage of your convictions as the Board of Selectmen.
My-
We're not, but the FinCom really, the role of the FinCom is not to help the Board of Selectmen get things passed at town meeting.
No.
You guys have a vision for the town, you're the goals, you know the charter better than I do. You're the goal-setting group of the town of Wellfleet by law. And your vision is the vision that you are attempting to present for the town. We look at it financially, but I don't know. I mean, I like I don't think we should be at war, but I definitely think that we have separate functions.
Charges.
Ira, none of us should be uninformed when we do this. You were on the select board for 12 years. You're absolutely right. It's our, document. The select board's document. But we should not be making uninformed decisions about it. And that's why we need to hear from you.
So can I say something else, like a specific point that can be generalized? We didn't understand generally last year why 3 Kendrick Avenue was up. I'm gonna say, without having any more information than I had last year, I personally am not sure what the justification is for putting it up again, in as much as a private individual purchased it. But one of the things we've been doing for over a year now is not just looking at something like 3 Kendrick Avenue, but a lot of other elements that are gonna cost the town a lot of money, including the dredging, sewer systems, expansion of the water system, whatever, and saying, well, you can't spend multiple millions on everything, so you look for extra justification for something so that you don't spend money that you're not going to have for something really critical later on. I'm not sure that, I'm not speaking for the whole finance committee, I'm personally not sure that the select board thinks along the same lines.
They don't, and they should.
Well, but so then we have the possibility on March 4th of it being like the old Saturday Night Live, finance board, you ignorant slut, because they're trying to, they're trying to say how, this is how we think, you think that way, and boom, 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 and it's just like.
What's the deadline for the warrant again?
It's only an hour.
We need to have our recognition, we need to have our recommendations in by March 8th.
Okay.
So,
So we need to decide on,
well, what I was
what
hoping
we're
to
gonna-
do tonight was to see if we can get through the operating budget and hopefully the enterprise funds and see where we are.
Okay.
And,
since we've reviewed them all, we
Yeah.
can take them as general and maybe ask the question, is there anybody here tonight who wants to make any recommendations to decrease or increase any of the operating budget?
I would be happy to do that if we do it one by one, so that we know.
One by one then?
Yeah, just to
Okay.
say what we're working on.
So to give you an idea of the handout that I gave you tonight, that has been updated to reflect that has been updated to reflect the Nauset school budget, which we didn't have when we put the books together.
right,
We also just got notification from Cape Cod Municipal Health Group that there will be a 0% increase in our health insurance.
So that's-
Hooray.
whoa,
Yay.
that's
So we
awesome.
had been budgeting, I think, a 5% increase, and I was even nervous that that wasn't enough.
That's
So
awesome.
Yeah,
when they
That's
came in
awesome.
and said it's going to be the same rates for 20 as they are for 19. So
your blood
everything,
pressure went down several
yeah, kind
points.
of, everything has then been, now is current in that document that you have in front of you. Those are the two major changes that were put in.
Quick question on the Tech High School, does that number reflect our share of the capital?
No, it is just the per student cost.
It's just the student?
Yep, we had 13 students in 19, fiscal year 19, and we'll have 12, and that's why you see the
And we're
adjustment.
doing the operating budget right now, right? Not the capital budget?
Cost of the,
That's correct.
so the cost per
Because
person.
we really
is
haven't
gonna go up.
Right.
do the capital budget. So,
Where are we?
So Janet, you're gonna come up with them one by one, call our attention to them, tell us the page.
well, we could work off of this for the numbers,
Okay.
because this is the most current set of numbers.
Where?
But I guess-
What the selectmen will do is look at the same document you have, and they'll move to approve, to recommend the general government budget, unless anybody has any changes or something, and then they'll go to public safety, and that's how they'll do it by division.
And
Okay.
what I think I'd like to do is actually start off with asking Dan for a brief, and you've given us the changes, but I just want
I
to.
Which one are we-
don't, could you
which
just show me
budget are we
what
going?
we,
Yeah.
Our,
where?
the first page is general government, so if we want to take them department by department.
Okay.
we can
I
go
don't
by
have
general
that.
government.
Yeah, you do, it's right in here.
You don't,
Oh, it's in here, that we just got?
There's, I guess, an updated one.
All right, hang on, let me get the updated one.
The spreadsheets are the schools.
Ah,
I
that's
read
why I
you're
couldn't.
you're looking for the, you're looking for.
I don't have it, that's why.
Oh,
you
okay.
want this one?
Is
Okay.
there
It's not
another
in
copy,
the
Dan?
That's a separate
I
handout.
think they have one.
You mean over that one?
That's the
Should've
housing.
gotten, they all got passed around.
We
Is
got
there
back
another
this
copy
report.
lurking somewhere?
I don't know.
No, I don't have one either.
We do, okay.
Oh, wait a minute, I may have one under here. Never mind, I lied, I got one under here.
Oh, you're hiding one over
Thank
there?
you.
I don't know either.
He doesn't have
I was
one
making
either.
notes. Okay, I lied.
Okay.
We will share.
And there's an extra one.
I lied.
Bob?
I got
Oh,
yours.
here they are, they're lying in a stack.
So if you look at the first page, it
So-
says general government.
We're the
First
fine.
page is general government, back page is general government. So if you want to take it
So if you,
Fine.
if
section
you'll,
by
if you'll
section,
allow
then
me,
Give them where they
I just
do it.
wanna ask
I
Dan
gave you what I had.
quickly if there's anything you wanna call our attention to.
Sorry about that.
You know, I don't think so, because I think the major things that were different this year, you've already talked to the various department heads when they were in front of you.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yep, so we know all.
So let's just take this by, the general government, let's take it by page to
Fine.
start, and then we can break it down further when we get to pages that have more things on them. So
Transfers.
let's just run down the first page. These are all, I mean, the only major variable in most of these budgets are salaries, and those are contractual, and I'm not sure there's much we can,
Right.
much to even discuss on page one.
Okay.
Cool?
Yep, good there.
But that would double the town administrator's salary.
Really, I was gonna have it.
I vote for you. I vote for you as chair. And I vote for you not to be.
Okay, I get that.
Okay, so let's take page 2 down to,
Total at the bottom.
Shellfish.
Town
sure,
clerk
total on
dropping
the
by
bottom.
twenty-seven
Yeah,
percent.
so this will finish off the general
So I move that we
portion.
approve the FinCom's budget of $1,786,765 as written in this budget.
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second, and is there any further discussion?
Just one quick question, why did the town clerk go down by 30% roughly?
You know, because we, in that position, we have an assistant town clerk now instead of a full-time town
Okay.
clerk.
Thank you.
So it's being spread over 2 departments. All right, so all those in favor of the motion?
Right.
All right.
All right. Excellent, thank you, so that's unanimous.
Next page, you got the Department of Public Safety.
I'm on it. So, public safety, this is police, dispatch, fire, building department, emergency management, animal control, traffic, parking.
Okay, we had a very good meeting with, the chief and the fire.
Both chiefs.
Police chief, both chiefs, so I'm gonna move this.
And with
Second.
Mark
I
Vincent.
agree.
And Mark Bisson,
So-
but his budget isn't on here.
The DPW is on here.
On,
I'm sorry,
Not in public
It's
safety.
No,
not
I'm
in
sorry.
public safety,
Yeah.
right? So I'm
Yeah,
voting
sorry,
public
right.
safety.
So it's been
okay.
moved and seconded to approve the $3,789,897.
all those in favor? All right. Education, and these are the current numbers. So
Okay,
it's $6,049,340. Do I have a motion?
I move it. I
Okay,
thought that it was well presented. I appreciated that.
Fred, any input?
No, I think we know that the middle school has assumed our special needs kids that were used to be in the elementary school, which is why that jumped up like it did. You know, that is what it is.
Did we get the number of what's in their funds that we asked for?
Right.
The floating fund or
Don't
whatever
I
that-
don't know that it was in that report
I
she
don't
sent
think
me,
it
so I'll
was.
Okay.
remind her and ask her again.
Okay, I'm just,
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have any
I don't-
problems,
I
I
don't
just
know
like
that
the
it's-
information.
okay. So it's not gonna affect your,
It's not gonna affect my vote,
Okay,
because there's
so-
nothing to do with it, but.
do we have a motion on this?
Yes,
Yes, we
do.
do.
And a second, so, all those in favor? All right, DPW,
I thought we had a very good meeting with the DPW. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it is.
move that.
got his ducks in a row.
1169051.
No, it continues on the next page,
Oh,
it's
okay.
2,065,806.
Okay, I'll move that number then.
So, and a second? All right, and
Esther,
any,
who was the second?
Linda.
any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, human services, so. We've spoken to Suzanne and she presented for Becky as well. And this is certainly, this budget is 681, 768, so.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Culture and recreation, so this is actually represented.
Dan, did the library, how come the salaries went up 5.19? We didn't talk about the library.
You know what, there's an addition of a 10-hour position
Okay.
in the library.
All right,
Yeah,
and I need it, fine, I just didn't know.
And for reference for upcoming, I know that the library is understaffed at the
Okay,
moment. And
okay.
so she will be looking for full-time in the future, but not this year.
Did the amount in the recreation budget for the pagoda come out?
That's
Or- or
that's
with
a
CPC.
CPC article, that's on
It's not
the,
gonna be
that's
in the
on,
operating budget.
it's
It's
not.
in the-
Okay, it's in that, okay, so it's not gonna be
It's
in
not
there,
in
we
here.
didn't put it in
Correct.
there, okay, I just wanted to make sure that we
It's-
weren't
it's
approving
this
a double.
one. No, it's this one
Capital.
right here.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yep, thank you, sorry.
Okay, so it'll come in, it'll be under the CPA
Yep.
articles on the warrant.
Good.
Okay, now the recreation, this 5.25%, do they have an extra,
Recreation.
do they have an
I
extra person or something?
Yeah, that's.
In recreation,
I have
they
it at
are
4.37.
They are asking the select
Oh, I
board
see what
to
you're saying.
approve the acceptance of a gift from Nauset Schools as a passenger van. So they added about $6,400 in additional part-time staff to provide the programs that would be associated with that van.
I actually had a couple of questions about that,
I'm not-
and you may or may not know the answer to this.
Ask them.
I just, no.
I didn't
Who,
know.
do we have any idea who will be driving the van?
It would we would hire somebody to do that. It would probably be the senior recreation staff who would do that. But they have to go through all sorts of background checks to make sure that they're qualified to do that.
Right,
So
and that they're appropriately licensed and,
that it's not everybody piling the van, we're going on a field trip type.
yeah.
I heard it was a part-time position, and he'll be working in the marijuana facility. The other half of the time.
I thought you were gonna say he's gonna be a COA driver, and I was just gonna shake my head.
I would never, hey.
All right.
I do
Where are those damn kids?
Can I just go on record and say, I do have an issue with gifts to the town that then suddenly the town assumes responsibility and
That's-
has to increase ancillary costs and personnel.
It's like somebody
and the
buying
rest-
you a dog at Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. The addition of staff, it's great to present this as, here's a gift of a van, $20,000, but now we have an additional person in a position, an additional liability that eventually when the van that has a limited life is no longer a use, the town has now increased the budget by that much to take care of somebody's good deed.
Well, my understanding is that this van is gonna be, the use of it is gonna be spread over several, it's benefiting more than just rec, am I correct?
It's mostly rec, but if like the COA needs it, they could use it for that as well. Kathy, I would say I agree with you 100%, and that's why I told Becky, you cannot touch that money until somebody has approved it at the select board level. Because you can't just add something on and then say, well, I have this new van, now I've got to pay all
Now
this
it's used
extra
forever.
staff.
Well,
Yeah.
do you,
The
And-
select
and now
board
it's-
has to acknowledge the fact that we're accepting this gift.
Yep.
And we're also accepting the fact that there will be costs related to it.
do you want to just not vote on the rec budget?
Hold for meeting.
We can
Well-
hold it.
I think it is up to the select board to make a decision as to whether this is something that they wanna take
So
ongoing
the gift has not
responsibility
yet
for.
been officially accepted.
That is correct.
That's
So,
basically what you're saying.
The
'cause
need
it's
for
not-
that additional staff is not yet a
If we
fact.
approve this budget and the select board does not approve accepting this gift, then that money will come out of that budget. They won't be allowed to spend that money.
But if we approve this,
Yep.
that gives,
We approve it with that, yeah.
that gives the impression that we are for this particular expense, which in fact I'm hearing from the group that at this point, we're not convinced.
Well, how
If
much
we
money
accept
is
this,
it?
we can make it clear at town meeting that,
But why don't we just not
Well,
vote on it?
because-
and-
Or decrease the amount?
Yeah, that's
well,
the way,
but that doesn't make sense either, right? Because it is conditional on whether this gift is accepted, and we can
why don't we
make it
wait
clear
until the gift is accepted then?
Because I think it's gonna be accepted, because the question as to whether or not it's accepted may come up at town meeting, that may be a town meeting decision.
These
So-
are all good questions for the March 4th meeting with the selectmen, you know? They wanna pick your brain.
Well, how much should
If
they?
you want to
What's left
withhold
of it?
I would
recommendation on this,
On the
division's
recreation
budget until town meeting, by then we should know whether that gift has been accepted.
Well-
We sat with Suzanne, this is, unless I was spacing out, which is
Possible.
possible. I didn't hear anything about this is new to me.
It skipped over really quick.
Oh, you
Hoping-
heard something
I
about
heard,
it?
we're hoping.
Oh.
So the thing is that I don't want to withhold, usually we have a vote on whether or not to recommend the operating budget as a whole. We can, it's clear to me that if this gift does not get accepted, and we can and I believe we will
Well,
be
you
in.
know it's gonna be accepted,
Yeah, probably is.
so
The selectmen have to accept it.
I'll go with the group, I don't wanna hold up
I
from the
would
group.
withhold money.
Is that,
If you want.
I would vote against it.
is that gonna come up at town meeting, or is that gonna be
I would vote
strictly up to
against
the
this
select
budget.
board?
The
The whole
acceptance of
culture
the
and
gift,
recreation
it
or
will be up to
just
the
the
select
recreation?
board.
How much of an increase?
But they will
is
have
it?
made that decision by the time town meeting is here.
I guess it's just, I'm looking at the salaries and they're just out of whack with other, anyway, I'm not
The
gonna go back
recreation
on that.
salaries?
Are out of whack with other essential activities that happen in the, if you compare things that are, and I'm not gonna go back to it, but I just don't think that gifting something is the way to increase your department.
staff.
Increase your department, increase your staff, and continually increase there's been a legacy of the recreation department accepting gifts and then having them become part of the town budget. And I just think we have a lot of other things that have to be considered for the amount of children and it's.
So how much is the staff position for this gift if it's accepted?
It's a certain number of hours.
It's $6,400 is the addition to the budget.
Alright, so I move that we decrease the salary and wages line item of the FinCom's budget for the recreation department by $6,400. So instead of $250,564, does anybody have a calculator?
Do I have to do this?
I do.
Yeah.
What's the specific question?
Well, if you just put it
If
in
you
the
just
motion, if
decrease
you want
that
to reduce it by
By
$6,400, I'll make the adjustment then.
Oh, you wanna just decrease
Just
that by $6,400?
Right, we're just
The
backing
Oh,
it.
that- 250, we're backing it out of the budget.
320, 506?
Well, Dan said he'd take care of it, so.
Yeah,
So,
321
I move that we
Yeah.
decrease the salary line
320.
on the
for
recreation.
recreation by $6,400.
anybody
And
going to
why are we
second
doing
this?
that?
Anybody going to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so got my question, why are we doing this?
This is, because Stephen wants to make it clear that we don't want this extra
That we're not
expense.
supporting this idea of accepting a gift and increasing salaries, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I am
You don't
gonna,
wanna bother that.
I'm gonna go on record as
Yeah.
saying I don't think this is the way to do it.
Well, how else would you do it?
But we can always put it back if they even accept the ban. We have no idea if they're, right now we're.
First of all, at town meeting, nobody's voting the FinCom's budget.
They're voting the selectmen's budget.
Correct.
So-
And the select board is not going to make this reduction. The select board is either going to accept the gift
I
or
wouldn't-
not.
I wouldn't necessarily say that because I truly am going to point out to them, okay, if you're accepting this van, you're accepting the future costs that come with this van. So that means not only the $6,400, but any maintenance and fuel and anything you
Right.
need.
Plus a
Insurance
driver.
plus a driver
Yeah.
and insurance and
OPEB.
liability.
So, I mean,
and
I-
OPEB,
And
It's-
if, but if they do not accept the van, then that $6,400 comes out of that budget anyway, so.
But we're
But
bringing
we're
it to
making
the
a point,
attention.
I agree, it's
understand.
it's a point.
Right.
And I
Is this
think it's a
van,
good.
by any chance, shaped like a large wooden horse? May the driver actually already be inside it?
All right,
I'm gonna,
So it was
those
moved
in
and
favor
seconded.
of
The amendment?
reducing the rec budget by $6,400 in our recommendation?
I'll
Those
vote in favor of that.
Mhm.
So Kathy, Fred, Stephen, Linda.
Jeff's kind of.
Basically, everybody but me, and I'm gonna oppose the motion.
Okay, but you know,
Jeff, I didn't see, how did you vote? Did you vote in
He
favor?
voted
It was
wishy-washy.
wishy-washy, exactly.
Jazz hands don't count.
There's one sense of not wanting to micromanage a
So you're
6,400.
gonna-
It's not,
You're gonna sit here all
it's
alone
a
in
PowerPoint,
opposition.
it's not.
I'll go against it, okay, I'll
It's-
put it down as
So we
opposed.
got 2 against.
It's
It's a
totally
prin- it's a-
wishy-washy. on
it's
we
this.
can
principle
change
vote.
our vote if somebody comes in and
I will
speaks
keep
to
you in
us.
the loop as to what the.
Please
select-
do.
It's not that I'm condoning the gift, I just disagree with doing this particular.
I don't see any other way
I'd
to.
very much like to convey the concerns of funding things with a gift and the longer-term ripple
Right.
Yes,
effects.
exactly.
I would like to convey that too, but
Right, how we
I
do that
don't-
is what I don't know.
this is likely to go unnoticed.
Nope, Dan said it's
No,
not.
because
So
what
we-
I'm
I
gonna
don't
do is
think
I'm gonna
Dan's
send
gonna-
out an email to all department heads explaining what your decision was.
Yeah.
If they are going to receive a gift, they should plan on it long before town meeting, so that people can accept
Would you
the
please-
gift and make the commitment to that additional cost before they include it in the
Would you
budget.
please say it's like receiving a puppy at Christmas? Would you, people will get that.
It's like receiving a special needs puppy at Christmas.
So speaking
You
of,
can't.
speaking
I'm
of,
kidding.
Yes.
There is one more point that none of you have brought up. Well, there's the repair of the vehicle, that's one thing. But it creates a need which is already being met in different ways. And we heard a number of the things that, you know, from Becky that it might be used for. And they're all very nice things. But those needs are already being met.
so it's like the 3 Kendrick.
I was gonna say, that was the three Kendricks package.
No, I didn't say that.
That's what it was.
So,
So if you wanna move now the culture and recreation budget, if you move it as amended, then I'll take care of it, and you don't have to give me the exact dollar amount, if you move it as amended, that will be sufficient.
okay,
I'm
so,
Before we go, I don't remember. Why are the operating expenses for the community services director jumping from 650 to 75,000?
We took all the portable toilets in
the
various
toilet.
departments and
I
put
knew I
it in
should
one
know the
area.
answer to this. Okay.
yeah, that is something that, I don't know who the person is who should be appealing this decision to the legislature, but this is really wrong from the point of view of everybody outside the major cities.
Pretty much.
There's nothing you
Boston
can do
runs,
about it, so
The
move
city
on.
of Boston runs a lot of things that affect all of us in a negative way.
Well, that particular rule change could have been written in a different way, and somebody needs to be looking into that, but it's not the finance committee.
So
I-
the
I-
66K drop under the beach program is the toilets going out?
Yes.
It's got-
Yes.
And the difference of 12,000 is we're getting better toilets or something? I forget.
Okay, so the total
Holiday
culture and
celebrations.
recreation
I move the
budget
total cultural
minus
recreation
$6,400.
as recommended.
As
As
amended.
amended.
As amended.
Second.
Second.
Alright,
All those in favor? Go ahead.
would you like to be chair, Stephen?
I'd like to move it along.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I don't think so. Look fast.
Please,
Oh,
please,
let's do
move
it.
forward.
We're gonna
Yeah.
go.
You can
Move
do it
it
anytime you
forward.
wish.
So interest
$6,400
accounts and
so,
benefits
yeah.
and insurance are both either no change or good news.
So,
Yay.
did we actually vote on that?
You
I'm
have
sorry,
that?
what page are we on?
Alright, all those in favor of,
You need a
That-
motion
I
first.
move.
it's been moved and seconded,
Okay.
I mean, for the culture and recreation.
Oh, yes, you've got that one.
Yes, we did that.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
We did not, as far as I'm concerned, vote on that,
Okay.
because I did not call the vote,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. All those in favor of culture and recreation minus the $6,400? Okay, fine, thank you. Interest accounts, a motion,
move.
Second.
all those in favor? Benefits and insurance,
Move. Second.
Nice.
all those in favor? All right, so that means that we have, because this is just the summary down here, correct?
Yes.
We have basically approved this budget less $6,400.
And you can revisit it if you need to
Right,
Yep,
later.
absolutely.
good.
So it's over 2.5%, what does that mean, an override?
No, there's sufficient funds to be able to do that, we have enough of
Right.
those.
We have the money
Free
to do
cash.
that.
The snow removal fund from 2018?
Yeah, we're gonna get some tonight.
Think so?
So, that is the operating budget.
Good, I'm happy.
Let us do the enterprise funds if we can. We have-
Okay, where,
These are in here.
They are,
In the back.
they're in our book?
Yep,
they are.
the one that says
There
enterprise fund, second to
is
last.
a tab for enterprise funds. Towards the back,
Okay,
okay?
yep.
And we have heard from both of these folks,
Yep.
The water and the marina.
correct?
Yes.
And, so let's tackle,
When you recommend it, you'll just do the total expense line item, so.
yeah,
Total ex-
yeah. the
Total
two-
expenses,
so-
yeah.
So for the water enterprise fund, the number is 288,861.
I'll move that. Oh, we're gonna do it all together. Okay,
So, is there a motion?
so move.
And a second from Fred, and does anybody want to discuss this further? All those in favor? Okay,
They were all also very good.
Yeah,
Really,
they were.
everybody who presented to us this year was
One
very good.
opposed.
I'm sorry?
You said all those in favor?
Okay, I'm sorry,
Nobody opposed.
I
Opposed.
apologize. Okay, Marina Enterprise,
Stevens, thank you. I'll make a motion,
Second.
that's for 625,
625, 669.
And a second from Stephen, and any further discussion, any questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Good. That takes care of that. Now, we haven't really gone over the capital budget. We could tackle some of the warrant articles. We've actually now, we can check off the top few.
Where would we find it?
Well, we've got the
Don't
cheat
have them
sheet, this one page.
Oh, okay. That's good.
And some of them are pretty self-explanatory. We've taken care of the operating budget. Dan, the transfers number tends to move, and we usually withhold recommendation at town meeting on that,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
meet right before to
Yep.
check on that. So, number 2, we're gonna withhold to town meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
So we've handled 4 and 5.
Hiring your invoices, nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, do you wanna tell us it's a much smaller number than it was last year.
Is that a solid number? That's what,
Unless anything shows up, which I don't expect it to.
okay.
There are 2 invoices. One was for the Navigator program. They were late in giving us their invoice, and it came in after the Navigator program that we do throughout our Cape Health.
Okay,
And the other one was about $2,400 for the cleaning the exhaust vents at the fire station. Again, the invoice didn't come in until late.
okay. So if everybody's okay,
I'm gonna move that.
Second.
questions, discussion, all those in favor?
Okay. Are these collective bargaining solid numbers?
Not yet.
Not
Okay,
yet.
so we'll withhold
So
those
hold.
till town meeting as well.
Okay. So then we're down to 11 additional fire staff.
Let's see, so we have the non-union and other personnel compensation, is that,
I wouldn't do any of 7 through 10
Okay.
yet,
Right.
okay,
because I still gotta tweak all of those.
all right.
Right. So,
Number 11, I'm having a meeting with the fire chief tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll hold that till next meeting.
so those are the 2 positions that the fire chief would like to add.
Yes, yeah.
So your meeting is going to be to sort of just solidify.
flush
the
it out,
number.
make sure he's got a good case for it and that he can argue it. Make sure I've got the right dollar amounts in here for it.
Okay. So we'll revisit that next week. So, and we don't have a number for 12 yet.
Okay, Chuck
Okay.
and Andy.
I got it, I just don't know where it is.
Okay, so let's look at the ladder truck. We don't need explanations on the vehicles. We've we know
We
about
do that,
those.
yeah.
Okay.
And this is all the result, most of this is the result of postponing some of these decisions. The police cruiser is a normal item. So let's take,
250 for the
13
mowing.
through 17. I think those are all ones we've pretty much heard about.
Okay,
So can I have a motion to
I will
recommend
move,
13 through 17?
yes.
Or second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Beautiful.
Is the bandstand awning the same as the pagoda?
No, this is the bandstand at the end of the pier.
Donated to the.
Was this another gift? This was another gift.
Yeah, this was another
This is a
gift.
result of a gift.
And
Yeah.
apparently the awning, the top part needs to be replaced.
And nobody's approached the guy who donated it.
And we don't know if this is a firm number or do we?
I believe it is a firm number at this point. I'd asked Becky, but I don't remember what her answer was, or if she did answer me on whether we approached the person who gave it as a gift.
Is this was this brought before us by Becky or by DPW?
Becky.
Suzanne discussed
Suzanne,
Suzanne.
yeah, Becky wasn't here.
No, I meant
Yeah.
recreation or
Yes.
DPW.
Yeah.
Isn't this by now a DPW project?
I would say, you could say yes on that, but it is a facility that's completely used by the recreation department. I think the DPW would be fine if we just didn't have an awning over it, that it was just an
I would
open
be
area.
fine if we
I'm
didn't have
okay
an
if we
awning
didn't have
over
our
it.
own.
I mean, it's used for the square dances on Wednesday nights, July and August.
And bands, they have bands there as well.
During the day, yeah.
And,
They can bring umbrellas.
No,
And
my principal
I'm
was-
aware of one memorial service that was held down there last year. But other than that,
So who wants to be the Scrooge that helped the Grinch that withheld square dancing?
No, they can still do the square dancing.
square dancing used to
to be-
not have an awning. It
Yeah,
used
the
to
guy
do,
just
he used to
just
stand up
stood
there on
with
some
the record
crates
player.
with the megaphone.
so
So I move we not recommend article.
Well, why don't we don't,
Well, we can wait.
why don't we wait until,
we're gonna hold off on that
I'm
one.
gonna just hold off, it's easier than saying no.
Well, sooner or later, we're going to have to give it a thumbs up or
No,
thumbs down.
stand for you.
Dan, what is the 50 grand for the library and town hall improvements?
So it has to do with the sidewalks at the library. It has to do with the flooring in the basement at town hall. And the restrooms in the library.
I'm definitely gonna move that. Anybody who's
All
ever
those in
peed at the
favor?
library knows that those things really need help.
All those in favor of recommending 19?
With that ringing endorsement, I wouldn't dare vote
At
against
one point, you guys were so shy with the cameras here, so.
So the forestry truck repairs, I think we can have a motion for that.
I'll move that.
I didn't know we had a forestry truck. Was that?
That's a lot for repairs, it almost seems like you buy a truck before you
Was that
get
a
it.
gift?
No, they're like 250.
They're huge.
Do you know what it is taking the tank pump design and construction, water piping and plumbing, and Class A foam system is basically taking those off the truck and replacing.
Oh, you take the
That's-
tanks
that
off
is
and
not
put them
small
on.
truck.
But everything on the
Yeah.
truck is being removed.
Yeah.
But
That's
not the
basically
truck
the
itself.
expensive part of the truck.
What's left is the wheels and the.
Pretty
The
much.
chassis,
Got it.
the cab.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, okay, so
I
we
got-
have a
I
motion and a
removed
second.
Who's second?
I think I seconded.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor? All right, so
Yes.
that's where I want, so the marina's fuel storage tank.
Gotta have a storage
Move.
tank.
Yeah.
We do have to have a storage tank.
Is this
but
above ground,
do we have a
below ground?
location
Yes.
for
This
these
is
yet?
an
Right
above
now.
ground tank at this
Mm.
point. I would not make a motion on this one yet, just because I don't feel like he's got it flushed out. of it.
Okay,
So-
that was my sense as well,
Okay, so
so
remove that.
we're gonna
from
hold
below
off
ground.
on this, we're gonna
Mhm.
need it at some point, but we'd like the rest
Okay.
of the details first.
My understanding was from our conversation that that is the lower end of the projection for what it would cost.
Yes, if
To
we had to
remove
put
it
it under,
and add a new one.
if we had to put it underground, you're talking
Okay.
somewhere in the area of
Yeah.
$600,000.
We'd
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to avoid that, but the point is, we don't wanna recommend authorizing borrowing until we know what the actual number is. Or at least closer to it. OPEB contributions 22 and 23.
Second,
No. Yes. Just kidding.
Nice.
you wanna do 22
All right,
and
motion and a
23?
second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Was that for both 22 and 23?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then, next one is,
So the transfer of the Marine Enterprise Stabilization Fund, this is towards dredging, correct?
I'm gonna move
Is
both
that correct?
stabilization.
I like it.
I'm gonna move both stabilization from
24 and 25?
24 and 25.
I will second them.
All those in favor? Okay, and we don't have numbers for the local access.
Mhm.
So I wanna stop there for now, because I wanna tackle the meeting minutes quickly and,
Okay.
I second that.
Okay, so we're gonna stop at 27
we're gonna
tonight?
stop at 27 for tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
good job.
There you go.
We have another meeting to discuss.
We have another meeting next week.
This is the first time I think we've ever met every single.
I know, but we've gotten a lot of really good
We got a-
information.
yeah.
I agree with you,
Yes.
I don't complain.
We
I
have-
don't like to eat dinner at 5:30.
I don't either. But I feel like we've really done our due diligence this year.
I do too.
Oh, gosh, sorry.
All right.
She's
Not
Gotta
rubbing
take
it.
the camera.
a water girl. Second.
Oh, no. Just trying to take the camera out.
All right, somewhere in here, there are the meeting minutes from the, we don't have the meeting minutes from the last meeting because Rebecca's been out sick. I assume yesterday and today,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a
So,
cold one.
we just have the meeting minutes from January 30th, which we did not deal with last week, so we could,
I move the minutes of January.
January,
January
January 30th.
30th.
30th?
I was not here, so.
if you read them, you can vote.
No moving.
Janet, would it be okay if I asked if anybody wanted to second it?
Oh,
Yes,
I second it.
I don't-
Sorry,
I was reading them.
yes, so, all those in favor of, meeting minutes, good.
All those opposed or
I'm
abstaining?
abstaining, not
One
here, and I
abstention.
didn't, I
Copy
didn't
of
read.
them around anywhere?
Here,
I didn't realize we could do that.
here. Keep together.
Sorry,
All right.
that's in all my
May I
years of
recommend
meetings.
one other motion?
You may.
Would anybody like to move that direct the town administrator to send an email to Rebecca, who is still in the hospital?
She's in the hospital?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I did
She's
not
got
know.
some sort of, she had stomach ailments and stuff like that, and they couldn't figure out what it was. At first they thought it was appendicitis, they thought it maybe was tuberculosis, they couldn't tell what it was.
Okay.
So she's still there, but I think it'd be nice if the FinCom made a motion to send their,
I'm gonna
Yes.
do better, I'm gonna
Okay.
make a motion that the town administrator send flowers.
Flowers, I agree.
Alright, shall we all just pitch in 10?
How many
I got
fla-
it covered, I got it covered.
Okay.
Sure.
Take it out of holiday celebration.
A second to that?
You can't accept.
I'm never going there.
All those in favor? Yes, please, thank you.
Good
I
idea.
had no idea till just now.
Yeah, she does a lot.
She does a lot, and she's been doing it very well.
And you especially notice when she's not there about how much you miss her, so.
Well,
I thought I was
stomach
gonna
ailments
lose my
are not
mind in
fun.
those months we didn't have an assistant. Okay, so I wanna quickly just ask if anybody has a liaison report. I don't have any correspondence, so if there's a
The
liaison
Beacon has
report.
sent
The Beacon. Have you been reading it?
No, I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it
I haven't
either.
even taken
It was so much fun.
Okay, strategic planning, Fred. We've
Yeah.
got a lot
I
of,
still look
we've gotten
forward to
a
this
lot
part of the
of,
meeting every week.
I know, because it's like, you're usually in this mode by
we've
this
got
point.
7 minutes here, folks, so,
It won't even take 7 minutes.
no. But we've gotten a lot of information from the department heads.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's outstanding that, so basically Dan and I had a couple of meetings. We talked about it a little bit.
Yep.
I'm in the process of putting together a set of, it's a PowerPoint, it's basically the charts that drove the development of the spreadsheet last year, updating it, contrasting where we were last year with
Have you been,
where we think we are now.
that's my list. Take a picture of it.
Yeah, I know we talked about these, so I'll
Yeah.
take a picture of it. Done.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what I owe Dan at this point is that updated spreadsheet or that set of things, and it's by line item basically, so it's the school stuff, it's the dredging stuff, it's the fuel tank stuff, it's all of this and that. And then Dan is gonna take a whack at whatever I can't fill in, he will fill in hopefully. There are a couple outstanding things, maybe off tomorrow's meeting with Chief Pauly, because that's one of them. There was that question that we posed to the chief about coming up with a more multi-year view of what his actual requirements were for new staff and his expectations of what he was gonna lose and what was it gonna cost us to replace what we were gonna lose and so on. The biggest ones that are sort of big question marks right now, and they're not answerable, are dredging, of course. The water issues around, they had the two plans around sewer A, sewer B, and what,
Wastewater
Right,
management.
but
yeah,
we've got-
wastewater management and what the potential implications are there.
We've got more
Um,
information on that now.
The water sprinkler systems for the library and the elementary school, the cost of the Nauset Regional High School modernization and what that will mean. But we can use, I think we can use the Tech High School as a sort of generic guide for that and say, well, it's gonna be 170,000 starting in 2 years or 3 years, whenever they get going with it, if they get going with it.
They gave us a timeline.
Yeah, but they haven't got any actual approvals yet, they don't even have a plan,
Right,
so.
the time, it's, we now have a better idea of when we might see those expenses
Right.
because of that
So,
timeline.
so the way we structured it last year was with a sort of confidence percentage of how well we understood the problem and when things were gonna hit. So a lot of these things are gonna have, not zero, but I think the biggest one, the biggest concern, and I'd just love to get a sense in 3 minutes of the room. There's a lot of ways to cut this information in terms of presenting it. There's, like, for example, there is a best case for dredging, which is that we've just taken last year's assumptions and slid them forward a year or two, which is that the feds come in, do their bit, the state pays 50% of what's left, and we pay the other 50%. It isn't hugely more expensive than we thought it was gonna be last year, and there you go. Or, there's the one that the feds don't do squat, and we're in the same boat as a number of other towns where we either have to buy a dredge, rent a dredge, share a dredge. When are we gonna do that? How much is it gonna really cost? It could be 20 million bucks that the town is on the hook for, potentially. And when Dan and I talked about it, it was like, I wouldn't wanna present that as reality, but it's a non-0% probability. Now, last year it seemed, if you look back at last year's report, it looked like a 0% probability that we were even potentially on the hook for the whole deal. Now it's more than 0, it might be 3%, it might be 10, and every year that we don't dredge, the chance that we're gonna have to pony up that more of that money increases, because there's a general sense, right, that dredging
It becomes
has to
more
be
and more
done.
critical.
So there's stuff like that, and the sewer thing is the same kind of thing.
But the other, but choice 3 is we just do not know.
Well,
And I think
and that's kind of
that's-
built into the assumptions, which
And I
is,
think
0 to
that's
60.
fair, I think that's fair to lay out.
well,
at
and
this
that's right,
point.
that's built into the narrative. The narrative basically says, because every section will have a narrative, right? It says, we have no idea. here's option A, here's option B, and there's probably option C, D, E, F that we can't even anticipate.
So Fred, what
You
is
know,
your
that Bill
question?
Gates drops in and decides he loves Wellfleet and he's gonna dredge the harbor. I mean, you know, who knows? Or Paul McCartney.
What is your actual
Eric
question,
Clapton.
Fred?
What's that?
What is your actual question?
How do you wanna present it?
How do you-
I'm just trying to get a sense of,
Best and worst case scenario.
How do you-
Dredging
how-
could be between X and
how
X based on.
how much
the
does the
vote.
FinCom wanna introduce variability or variable scenarios? I don't wanna scare the town. I mean, I just wanna put out what's real,
I
you
think,
know?
I think a summation with, you know, in the case of something like that, it's very simple. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, and it could be anywhere in between. We just don't know yet.
Okay.
And that's the best information we have. Some things we have more information on, but for the things that we don't, I think that's a fair way to go.
I think that we don't know them, and that's why we're strategic planning, to let everybody know, you know, while you're voting all of these great things into, you know, this BHAG is.
Be
Becoming
aware
about-
that
I haven't heard
stuff
that
is
term
coming.
in like 20 years. Really?
Yeah.
Would you come from that world?
BHAG,
What's BHAG?
big hairy audacious goal.
Oh, I love that.
And it was Jim Collins, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that Jim Collins, like Good to Great or something?
All
Good
right.
to great, great to
Yeah.
good to great.
Yeah.
BHAG.
So, I would like, unless somebody has other business, I would like a motion to adjourn.
Oh, no.
Second.
Good
Third,
gracious.
favor, thank you very much.
Thank
Next
you.
week.
We did a lot tonight.
I love
did.
BHAG.
So I'll say as you part, I think